As the late season rolls in, you head into the woods, and the sign is everywhere. Fresh tracks, new rubs, and countless beds. But as hours pass, you realize something crucial. The deer just aren't showing up. It's a common frustration that leaves many hunters scratching their heads. But what if I told you that the sign is not the whole story? In this video, we'll dive deep into the hidden truths of late season public land hunting. By the end, you'll understand exactly why that sign doesn't always mean what you think, and you'll walk away with strategies that can transform your late season hunts. How's it going, everybody? My name is Justin Hawkins with the Public Land Sportsman. I'm an Alaskan hunting guide and grew up in the hunting industry. My father was one of the largest taxidermists in South Alabama for 20 years, and I have been involved in deer hunting since I was 6 years old. Tracks, trails, and poop. You're gonna see a lot of that in late season, especially in the snow. And what I'm doing when I go in there and I'm seeing a lot of tracks. I'm seeing well-defined deer trails. And I'm seeing a lot of sign that you can't see in early season because of the foliage and the cover. We go in for a hunt, place we've never been before. It's late season archery. And we go in there and we start seeing a bunch of sign. You know, you're walking along and you see snow kicked up, you see leaves kicked up, you know, and it's under an oak tree. I mean, pay attention to that. Obviously, they're feeding there. And we see all this sign. You're gonna see some scrapes that are still getting hit. You might probably still even see rubs that are still getting hit. I set up, hunt that afternoon, and I don't see a deer. I set up and hunt the next morning, and I don't see a deer. So immediately, you know, your mind's gonna start problem solving. It's gonna start looking for answers to the reason you're not seeing deer. And empty sits are common for me in late season. What I do to minimize the amount of empty sits I have is I set a limit. And at least a hunt in the morning, a hunt in the afternoon, or vice versa, whichever way it works out. You're seeing a lot of fresh sign, but no deer. There's three main things I believe you need to figure out in order to fix that problem. First and foremost will be bedding. Where are they bedding at are the most important question to answer. As we go through deer season and we start losing foliage, we start losing the leaves, and you know, your canary grass and ragweed and wood nettles, all of that start dying. The places that were super thick in late October are bare with no cover in late December most of the time. You're gonna have thickets, you're gonna have greenbrier thickets, you're gonna have little scrub oak thickets mixed in with briar. And in late season, I find that a lot of these little thickets, some of them are, you know, they're 10 by 10 yards, you know, that's it. Or it's just a blown over tree with a high enough stem count to conceal that buck enough that he feels safe. And these empty sits, if you don't set a limit on them, they will wear you down mentally. Because if you don't have answers to these questions after a couple sits, you need to go get answers to them, because it's gonna wear you down mentally. It's gonna cause you to sleep in or cause you not to go hunt on days you should have went and hunted. So how would I get answers? Well, I usually won't sit until I answer all of these questions first, but I'm gonna follow the track. I'm gonna find the biggest track I can find coming up and down that trail. Or I'm gonna walk until I cut a big track. And I'm talking big, like one that makes you step back and question whether or not that's from a deer. And that, granted, that may not be possible throughout the country. And I'm gonna follow those tracks and see where they go. Because of the lack of cover, these deer, especially the bucks, are going to be limited on how and where they can travel. So empty sits need to be at a minimum, because the more you sit there and don't see anything, you're gonna start having thoughts come into your head. And one that I am not very fond of that you hear all the time is "they went nocturnal." To me, "they went nocturnal" is a statement that resembles a cancer, because just that thought alone will immediately start to kill your momentum, and it's going to start causing you not to get aggressive when you need to be aggressive. I fully understand deer move at night. Deer move at night all year long. They move at night in the summer, in the spring, in the fall, and in the winter. That is not something that just happens from the month of September till the month of February. How early or late they get up to move is what changes, or how far they move. And that's why I will study the sign I have at hand. Now, I'm out in the woods all year long. There's never a season, a month, a week I'm not out scouting or just looking around, just killing time out there, just being present on the land and being involved with what's happening. So I'll take this sign, I'll take the big track, and I will follow it all the way to where I think that buck is bedding. And in the late season, because your cover's so minimal, if you follow that sign, more than likely you're gonna bump that buck up, or you're gonna kick some deer up. And usually I would say 98% of the time when you're walking along in the winter in late season and you jump a deer midday, mid-morning, early afternoon, that deer was bedded there. Now, whether or not you're able to kill that deer where it was bedded at that moment really doesn't matter. But if you pay attention to the terrain that deer was laying at, what kind of trees or bushes it was bedded next to, and why that deer was bedded there, what it can see. So following that sign, you're gonna start seeing scat, poop. Obviously, the deer are gonna go to the remaining ag fields, whatever food's remaining in the ag fields. So that might be on private land next to public. A lot of our public up here in Indiana has ag fields on it. There'll be standing corn left all the way till now. We still have standing corn in some places. And then it's also gonna take you to other places they're eating, you know, because they'll eat the woody browse. You know, it's going to be your buds and your twigs and, you know, bark off sumac, maple, cedar. You know, they're going to shift to things that are high in fiber. Any mast crops, you know, your acorns that are left, usually red oak. You start getting some saplings shooting up, those tender saplings, they'll eat those. And the deer are going to become less selective when it comes to food for a short period of time. They're really going to be focused on a high energy, readily accessible foods because they want to be able to survive the cold and they're not going to burn a lot of energy. So you're going to see a lot of these deer bedded close to the food source, which eliminates a lot of ground for you. You know, there's a saying in fishing that 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water. Well, late season deer, it's the same way. 90% of the deer are going to be in 10% of the woods. Usually if you find one deer or two deer, the rest are right around there somewhere from my experience. And studying that sign, following that sign, you know, I'm not just talking about one pile of deer poop going down a trail. I'm talking when you get and you start seeing the trail open out where it kind of makes a bubble around this trail where the deer are walking around foraging and you see multiple piles of poop. That's going to be your feeding areas that, you know, aren't obvious in late season. And usually I'll find those, it's going to be in your thicker cover because there's less cover in the late season. There's less cover for them to travel. And deer follow transition lines when they travel because of the cover. They bed in switchgrass fields, CRP fields because of the cover. So as all of those things start to diminish, their core area is going to diminish with it because they want to stay near cover. They don't know property lines. All they know is being hungry and needing to feel safe, be hidden that time of year. If you have 1,000 acres, or we'll even go, I mean, I would say 1,000 acres is probably a pretty legitimate, reasonable, average, less than average size piece of public land. A buck can live its entire life only moving in daylight on an acre or two. At night, they get out and they travel and they move. So say you have 1,000 acres. I was in the same school of thought as a lot of people in my younger years. I pull up to go hunt on that 1,000 acres. Let's say there's 5 access points coming in on 1,000 acres. We'll give that a rough guesstimate. So say you pull in, worst case scenario, pull into the first parking lot, 5 pickup trucks. Second parking lot, 5 pickup trucks. Third, fourth, fifth, same scenario. 25 people going to hunt 1,000 acres. You have the woody browse, or you have food on that 1,000 acres in late season, and they're hitting it at night. That property's not dead until you get in there and follow those trails and see where they go and keep track of the fresh sign, big tracks. A lot of private land in the Midwest is farmed, which means there's very little cover on that private land. And a lot of times, from what I see, deer are bedding on public and then feeding on the private. So on that 1,000 acres, say you have 25 people hunting that 1,000 acres, that's 40 acres per person. And deer can live on half an acre if they only have to move in daylight. You know, I would drive around and I would see deer on private land, and on the public, I wouldn't see any deer moving. That is because of pressure. There's less pressure on that private land. There's more pressure on the public land. You follow the sign and you trust the sign, find the bedding and know where they're feeding, then whether or not they actually are nocturnal goes out the window. Because if you know where he's bedding and he's not moving in daylight, there's no reason for me to sit and wait. I have a limited number of hunts left in the year. And if I have an idea that he's bedding in a certain spot, I'm not going to let that opportunity go by. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to try to kill that deer. I'm not going to go in there before daylight in the morning and set up in that bedding area without knowing the routes he likes to use to come in and out of that bedding area. Because from my experience, it is extremely difficult to hunt bedding areas in the morning because the deer come in from downwind to go lay down because that's where they're going to sleep. That's where they're going to become vulnerable. So they're going to exercise the highest amount of caution going in there by coming in downwind and smelling if there's danger there. Now, as soon as you can figure out the main main trails coming in and out, and the smaller, less defined trails, because generally that's going to be your buck. Once you figure out where those trails are, then you can make a play and hunt an off wind. There's certain things you could do as long as you can get in there early enough and quiet enough. That's going to bring you to your afternoon hunts or even late morning hunts. Really, I would say hunting in the morning, your best bet would be hunting an off wind, and that's going to take you doing a ton of homework and a ton of boots on the ground to figure out where those trails are and how they're coming in and out. Because obviously if they come into a bedding area downwind, you're going to have access points all the way around that bedding area depending on how the wind's blowing. Deer do not sleep in the exact same bed over and over. They bed around a structure, usually a big pile of bushes or blowdowns or cattails. So once you get all that information and you have it on a map, whether it's Onyx, Spartan Forge, whether you have a public land map from the WMA you were at and you're just marking it with a pencil or a pen, once you have all that laid out in front of you, then you can start making educated decisions. And you can set up on those deer coming out of bedding in the afternoon and the evening and going to food. What I see a lot, and I did it the first few years I hunted, was hunt out of ladder stands. Put these ladder stands up, say they set up 3 or 4 of them on public land, which, I don't think that's the norm for most guys. Usually it's 1 to 2. They hunt these same ladder stands all year long. Every time they go hunting, they drive to the same parking lot, they take the same access route to their stand, and they hunt the same stand every time or every other time. And if you're hunting out of a ladder stand in late season, you're not hunting for a buck. You're not hunting for a mature buck, at least. It's going to be your younger deer, the dumber deer that are walking by that ladder stand. As soon as you go in there and set that ladder stand. So you go in there September 15th, say it's a Friday afternoon after work, you go in, set up your ladder stand and leave. You're out of there right at dark, you didn't make a bunch of noise, you brushed it in real good, and you have the utmost confidence that that stand's going to pay off with you. But as soon as you leave and the deer hear the gravel pop off those tires heading out of that unit, they're on their feet and they smell you. They smell your ground scent and they follow that ground scent all the way to that tree stand, all the way to that ladder stand, and they'll follow it all the way to the access point you came in on. And they may not pay much attention to it the first time you sit it or the second time you sit it. By the third time you sit it, within 40 or 50 yards of that ladder stand, you'll usually find a few deer beds, because deer will bed next to a ladder stand where the wind's either coming from your access point or they can see your access point and they're just waiting on you to show up. They hear the gravel pop off your tires coming in. They hear your door squeak as you open it. They hear you make that one little push as you close it quietly to get the door to click so your light doesn't stay on and kill your battery. And then they hear you start walking. And once you start getting close to their range of discomfort, they get up and they slip out without you ever knowing it. Just because a deer winds you and smells you does not mean it's gonna blow and let you know that it did. That's not always the case, especially with a mature buck. I see a lot of mature bucks that will not even run with their tail up. They keep their tail down when they run. A ladder stand is probably the biggest killer of late season hunts. Second to access. Access during late season is extremely important. When I hunt CRP fields in late season, I already know those deer are gonna hear my truck driving in and out of that management area. Once I get to the parking lot, depending on how close or how far they are, more than likely they're not gonna hear my footsteps, but they're in a position where they can see access coming out of that parking lot. Maybe you have to go through a field of corn and then through a tree line and then you hit open country, or vice versa. You go through the trees and then you hit open country, old ag fields or switchgrass fields, CRP fields. 98% of those time, those deer are in a position to watch that or smell that depending on the wind. So as I'm hunting these late season spots, I am doing all I can not to expose myself. So instead of walking on the edge of a field in the tree line right on that transition, I'm inside the tree using it for cover. It's noisier, but everything in the woods makes noise. Chipmunks make noise, squirrels obviously, titmouse, quail, turkeys. If you live down south, armadillos, which sound like a tank moving through the woods sometimes. So noise does not bother deer. It's gonna be loud cracks from heavy limbs. Most any snaps from limbs will alert deer. Obviously metal clanging against metal, any unnatural sounds are going to alert deer. So I would rather make noise than have them see me. You can take a turkey call, make a few purrs or soft yelps to help. All right, guys, that's going to conclude part 1. Hit that like and subscribe button, and then Click the bell to be notified when part 2 drops. And if you guys want to know more about hunting deer off the ground, check out this video right here. And I will also link some more videos in the description. Or hunting mature bucks in general. Check out my books on Amazon. You can look at my author page. It's under Justin Hawkins. Or I'll leave the links to the books in the description. But if you guys have time, at least go by there, check it out, maybe leave it a like. It still helps me out. One is the quick guide to hunting mature whitetail bucks, and the other one I just published last week is how to hunt mature bucks on public land. Thank you guys so much for watching and being a part of this experience with me. Everyone be safe out there, and God bless, and I'll see you on the next one.